Hi, welcome back or welcome to my channel if you're new. My name is Laura. Hi, hello, welcome. Today we are going to do the recap, the final installment, just how we were looking with my palettes that I was using for the month of December, because I am going to be, right after I film this like recap of the palettes I used, we are going to be filming my Pan Those Eyeshadows intro. So stick around. The intro for that will be going up pretty soon, within the next week. But I just wanted to go over the palettes that I was using for the month of December. Truly, it is probably the shortest amount of time that I've spent with palettes doing this rotating palette kind of series. We filmed bringing these into the stash for December on the December 5th. So we've seen about 20 days of use. It is the 27th when I'm filming this right now. So I wanted to just recap my palettes that I used, and then I want to start Pan Those Eyeshadows again. I've missed that project so much. And I'm still going to be panning my Subculture. You would have seen a Pan That Palette update go live a few days ago or a couple days ago, whatever. I will link it in the cards. But I am still mainly focused on panning my Subculture palette. So the rotating palettes were just to accompany my Pan That palette, and just like my Pan Those Eyeshadows will also to accompany my Pan That palette. So I'm just going to grab from the top of the stack down to the bottom. So the first one we have on top is the Kaleidos Futurism 6 palette, the Lunar Lavender palette. This palette is so darn pretty. You'll see a general theme with the palettes that randomly got selected this month, but this is the Kaleidos Futurism 6 Lunar Lavender. Beautiful palette. I reached for every shadow at least one time. Yeah, once or twice. That was how the most for that palette. I wasn't really craving like these purpley kind of tones, which we pulled a lot of purples in for the past month, so I had to spread my time pretty strategically. But we reached for each shadow at least one time in this palette, which is always exciting. That's always my goal for the rotating palettes, is just to at least use each shadow one time. Now, most of them I didn't make that goal or meet that goal because we had them in for such a small amount of time, but it is what it is. But the ABH Prism palette was the palette next. I reached for quite a few of the shadows in this palette, to the point where I hit pan in one more shadow, which is always exciting. Probably can barely see it, but it's in this shade. It's in this shade Unity. You can hopefully see a very small glimmer of the pan. I think with Unity, it has like one of the, I don't know the term for them, like the nipple of the pan pokes up right there. So I think that the pan is just the teensiest amount more shallow right in that area. But I hit one more pan in this palette, which is really great. So now we are up to 5 pans in this palette, which is always a good thing. I like when my eyeshadow palettes have pan in them, and just in general, the palettes look loved, not just one particular shadow in the palettes. So this one is looking rather loved. The shadow that I was the most excited to use, Dimension, is actually one of my least favorites anymore. So it's weird that your tastes can change. And when I say you, my taste can change in the course of a year or 2 years. So we reached for definitely that shade Unity. The one that we hit pan in was the one that we reached for the most, but I reached for a handful of these shadows. I liked having some of these bronzy kind of tones with my Subculture palette. I always thought Prism was kind of like the sister palette, like what Subculture could have been. So I like having both of them in my collection, but happy that I reached for my Prism palette. My Prism palette was one that I was neglecting for a good long while. Same thing with this. This is my Shroud Cosmetics Creepy Cute palette. Now, my packaging says Strobe Cosmetics. They changed their brand, their name, after I bought this, but we reached for not every shade. We reached for about half of the palette. So, Planchette I enjoyed. Strawberry Milk obviously has pan in it. I enjoy using that one. I even reached for like Cold Shoulder. That was it. I didn't reach for like the greens or the grays, but that's fine. Not the time of year that I would really want to reach for those kinds of shadows, but I still really enjoy this palette. I'm happy to have it in my collection. Do I have pastels in other palettes now? Yes. This was my first pastel palette though, and it holds like a soft spot. And I don't know why, but I feel like really cool. Like I was in the in crowd before it was like the in crowd, since it has Strobe Cosmetics on the packaging rather than Shroud Cosmetics. So I feel like cool kid for having it before they changed their name. I don't know. And then the last palette, and probably the one that I was the most excited to reach for out of the bunch, was this guy. This is my Natasha Denona Love palette, and I ended up purchasing this and a couple other Natasha Denona palettes during the Black Friday sale. That was like the only splurgy purchase that I did for myself, so there is that. But this is what the palette is looking like now. The shadow, oh gosh, Dream here is one of those like cream to matte formulas, and I gotta tell you, I don't like the formula in this shadow in particular. For some reason, just like, well, first of all, let's just call a spade a spade. The pan looks disgusting now, but I'm not a huge fan of cream to powder kind of formulas. I believe the shade Commitment is also a cream to powder, and I like that formula for that type of color because I can easily put it on my outer corner. But I did reach for a good handful of these shadows. I reached for probably a good half of the palette. Yeah, there was only like 4 or 5 shades that I didn't reach for, so that's not bad out of a 15 pan palette. Plus a palette that's so darn new in my collection, and I reached for the majority of the shadows, which is always a great thing for me. I'm very happy when I can show a palette that was pretty expensive or buy a luxury brand. I'm always happy when I can show love into those kinds of palettes. But I am not going to be grabbing any more rotating palettes because I am planning on doing my Pan Those eyeshadows. So that is it for my rotating palette series. Maybe I will bring this back once I kind of get my bearings in my Pan Those eyeshadows and my Pan That palette. I might bring back the rotating palettes. So right now I'm just okay with pivoting my focus to away from palettes as a whole and more to individual shadows. Now I know there is some controversy in some folks where they want their palettes as a whole to look loved versus a shade in a palette to look loved, but there's like some type of euphoria I feel when I hit pan in an eyeshadow, regardless if the rest of the palette looks used or not. There is like a sense of immediate joy that I get out of hitting pan and eyeshadow. So I am excited to kind of be wrapping up and concluding the rotating palettes. I might still low-key try to touch all of my palettes in a year. We have acquired some new palettes. Haley was an absolute angel and sent a handful of palettes my way that either she was decluttering or for Christmas. Thank you, Haley. You are such a kind friend. That's like the only way that I can say it is that you are the #1 true friend. I appreciate you. But that is it. That is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys are interested in seeing my Pan Those eyeshadows and my other panning content that is coming. Either has come already in the past couple of days or will be coming. All the intros, y'all. January is intro season, so I'm excited to start filming my intros and start panning some items come the new year. But I hope you guys are staying healthy, sane, and safe, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye!